Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We'd like to reconvene the meeting, the judicial meeting. And the first order of business would be normally the minutes, but these minutes are not complete, so we don't know.
Right, we're still in that meeting. I just brought them for your reference.
Okay. And the next order of business is we'll go into executive session. And at this time, I'm presenting to us.
Yep. All right, we met in executive session to discuss the two reports that we had received on the complaint of Felicia Hale and the complaint of Lisa Colton-Gironi. No votes were asked for, none were taken. I'm allowed to meet with the committee to answer questions and discuss contents of the report. So that's what happened, and now we're ready.
Okay.
Mr. John.
Okay, as a result of our discussion, I'm going to read part of the report. First one from the investigation for Deputy Director Felicia Hale. And in sum, I found no evidence of unlawful harassment or retaliation. And on the back it says, I do not recommend any disciplinary action at this time. However, I do recommend EEO training and a statement to Director Colton-Gironi, remind her that retaliation against Deputy Hale or any other commissioner participating in this investigation is prohibited. And that's the sum of that one. So therefore, that's it. On the other investigation, had to do with allegations by Director Colton-Gironi, and the report is 10 pages, but the conclusion is I will not provide any recommendations. The Judicial Committee has asked me to conduct an investigation into 2 of its Judicial Committee members. I believe there's a conflict of interest between the Judicial Committee and any individual commissioners. Otherwise, she was not comfortable that the committee should be investigating a member of the committee. And that's, she did come up with some findings, but they're not appropriate to divulge at this time because she made no recommendations, bottom line. So that was Miss Angelita Fisher's report. Now, in our guidelines, we've discussed this, and we have a guidelines book for the office. But in discussing this, we find the TCA, the code, the state code, some of those things we have in our guidelines, in our rule, are not in compliance with the TCA. So I'm going to make a recommendation that we delete that guidelines book that we have. Not the guidelines book if you have it in office. That's an office procedure book. That's not under our purview. That's the guidelines for your office.
I'm gonna correct one thing you said there, Mr. John. You said we have found. I'm not included in that we.
No, not you.
No, that was something you and Commissioner Breeze did.
Yeah.
And I'm not included in that. There may be some things that are not correct in there. But keep in mind that actual policy book was brought to us by the judicial commissioners themselves. And I believe it came from the chief judicial commissioner.
Actually, no, that's not really true. We wrote that and rewrote that when Terry Ash was the chair with Mr. Kurtz and I here and the other members of that committee at the time.
So there was already one in
I
place.
stand corrected.
There was one in place, but we rewrote that.
That was already in place.
It was already in
Okay.
place, but we rewrote it.
But
Okay.
it was,
I
And I
stand
think,
corrected.
actually, I think Terry Ash wrote
You
it.
sold me on it. I
He
stand
wrote, I
corrected.
think he wrote the original one.
but what I heard you say is there's some things that, in your opinion, don't agree with TCA.
No, I said
No, I'm sorry, just Mr. John.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what,
I'll make a motion that we do away with the policy and procedure guidelines for the Judicial Commissioner's Office. And as part of that motion, we allow HR to take over the Judicial Commissioner's Office on the procedural basis and put them under the same guidelines that all county employees are under. and therefore the judicial committee would have nothing to do with the judicial commissioners on a day-to-day basis.
One quick question, have we skipped something?
Oh, hold on, but we've got a motion on the floor, so
Right.
we've got to, okay, so I'll second that.
You're Elizabeth.
Okay.
HR to
And then
take
we've got a
over
question.
Take over
and make commissioners subject to the county handbook?
to
Yes.
only the county handbook, the county employee handbook,
Okay.
taking all
And the
day-to-day duties away from the judicial committee.
And the TCA code that governs the Judicial Commission office,
Right.
because we can't take that away.
Therefore, we can have some discussion, but that's the motion. So it would
And I'll be your second.
dissolve the handbook and guidelines totally.
Okay, you have a second?
I'll be your second, I have one.
Okay, I have a question. Go ahead.
So it's been asked if we were supposed to have public comment at this meeting?
No, we're not.
Okay,
We
well,
already
I
had it.
figured we
We already
already had
had
it at the previous meeting.
We had it-
Right.
we had it at
That
the
was my
previous meeting.
understanding. So I just, it was asked.
That's okay.
This,
Okay, so that, we have a motion and a second, and to make sure we understand what this means, the guidelines book would go away. Any complaints from that office,
anything at all that is in that guideline book will go away. Everything.
So everything would fall underneath the employee handbook, so, like, there's a, I think it's section 8 is conduct. So anything, you know, conduct-wise would be,
well, in
Section
addition to
8.
that, there are job descriptions for judicial commissioners. They will not go away because they were written by HR, very much.
Then they're gonna have to be
Right.
incorporated in the employee handbook.
They're
well,
all,
job descriptions in general are all HR.
they're all HR,
Yeah,
and none
so-
of them are in the handbook.
Yeah, if they're not,
They're
yeah,
not in the handbook.
they're
so
not,
that-
yeah,
And
You can
so
look
when
at
you
them.
say.
Oh, I would agree with you.
yeah.
But
Okay.
my motion that you seconded was to
Right.
totally do away with that book.
Yes, I
So
understand,
everything in it would go away.
I
That's,
understand, yes.
Okay, when you say it would go away, do we do away with any supervision within the office of the Judicial Commission?
So that's some of the questions that I have, and I will, hang on, sorry, I have lots of papers.
Because right now, we have a director, we have an assistant director.
Right, so.
Now, that's been established before we had the handbook.
Right,
I don't know.
And that's been here
okay, so
longer than the handbook.
I've had conversations with CTOS, and they have consulted with the attorney that deals with judicial commissioners with CTOS, and this is what I've gotten back. So, and I'll just read parts of these emails. The first thing I got back was, I spoke with the CTOS attorney that deals with judicial commissioners, and he said he did not know of any other county that had a director over their judicial commissioners. He states that some had them under the supervision of general assistant judges. I followed up with 2 questions. First, can someone have administrative authority over a judicial commissioner's office? This person would not have authority over the decisions made in the issuance of warrants, etc. However, can this person set schedules, be in charge of the budget for the office, and enforce the county HR policies? And then secondary, are judicial commissioners considered county employees? Our commissioners earn vacation, comp, and sick time, they vest in TCRS and draw retirement benefits, which is different than elected officials. And then I asked if this is typical for judicial commissioners in other counties. So what I got back was, the attorney I spoke with stated the supervision was a creation of the county commission and would not have a legal right to have its own personnel policy, hence the motion. The personnel policy county commission adopted should be the policy they're using, meaning this should be the policy book over these employees, just like every other employee in the county, period. Goes on to say, I believe they would be county employees, to answer my second question. Certainly the director and assistant director would be county employees. They certainly are not contractors and they're not elected officials. So if we're paying them, so they're paying benefits, if you pay for their health insurance or withholding tax and paying Medicare tax and Social Security, then they are employees. So I was then advised to speak further to the county attorney about this, but that was the question. So my understanding is that we can have, because the county commission has actually set up the office, and I believe there's a lot of other counties that do have a director in set up, but effectively the directorship is administrative only, meaning budgetary, scheduling.
Training.
And so on.
Training and swearing in.
Right. I don't think it's even swearing in, I think swearing in is.
Well, you gotta be
would
sworn in
done by
as the
judges.
judicial commissioner.
Right, but I would think a judge would need to do that, right?
Judge or
They do.
county mayor.
Right. So again, you have a director who's administrative,
But also a judicial commissioner.
but yes, but that means that from a judicial commissioner perspective, they're all even. So it's almost like all the rest of us that are all elected officials in this county, if you actually put us in an org chart, it would go like this. We're all the same. My understanding, so like the sheriff doesn't report to the county commission doesn't report to the sheriff, that, you know, we're all, I mean, literally, if you did an org chart, we'd be in a line. Because nobody reports to anybody other than the citizens of this county.
Okay?
Okay,
Question,
so,
question.
so I think my understanding is judicial commissioners are supposed to be the same once they're appointed, but they don't report to each other. Does that make sense?
No.
Now, see, this is where things got
Well, here's the problem I
confusing from
see.
administrative.
Because if you have someone administrative over the office,
Right,
and they're a county commissioner as well, which is not uncommon,
the judicial
a
commissioner.
judicial commissioner as well.
Right,
Then that person will set the schedule, will set the training, will set this.
right,
So we have to have somebody that does the scheduling, the budget, and
right.
that person will do it. But if you're all equal, if somebody over here says, well, I don't want to work that shift, I don't want to work this shift. Now, what kind of authority does she have?
Well, that's some of the question that I have, and I think from that perspective.
That would be an HR
because-
question.
Yes, well, I think too, because the county commission set up this office and set up the directorship. I think being that they're all county employees, if she's administratively the director, then these are administrative policies. Then potentially she could, along with HR, like any other director for any other department, use this policy book to make sure employees are following the policy just like any other county employee. Now, again, that's just my opinion.
So if they don't
And
come
I'm
to
not a
work,
lawyer by
so
any
if they don't
means,
come
so-
to work on time, or are they
That's in here.
early?
That's actually in here,
I
so.
know it's in there. It's in
Right,
there.
so I think that, you know, you would have to actually follow, I mean, there's a whole section, attendance and punctuality.
Right,
Every employee is expected to report for work regularly and on time. Good attendance is the most important job requirement and essential duty of every position. I mean, it goes on, so I'm not gonna
Right.
read you the book. But, I mean, those are the types of things that are outlined in this county employee handbook. So I would think that if you had a director, that they would enforce the county employee handbook along with HR, just like any other director.
so the director would be in charge of scheduling, training, the budget,
Right,
but of course,
That's up to HR.
no, that's what we're voting on now.
What we're voting on, my
I would think
motion on the
so.
table
right.
is to do away with that policy and procedures manual. That's the motion on the table.
I'm looking to see in the manual if there's actually discussion about directors of about departments. I don't think that there's, I'm not seeing anything specific about,
So what you're saying is you want to do away with all supervision in that office. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say that. I said do away with that policy.
and I think, like I said, because if we have a director and per the county commission, we put that director in place that she would have the administrative role to be able to use this policy book to manage the administrative duties of that office. Now, day-to-day, actually working in the, like doing your job functionality, that's set up by TCA. once you start processing a warrant or having a conversation with somebody about anything legal, TCA says that you're supposed to be neutral and detached, which would mean that you can't have anybody above you.
Correct. Can't have anybody with a veto.
Right, so that's what I'm saying is
Well, with
that
the
I think
veto
you
power,
need,
true. What if they have a question? If they have a question about some things?
see, that's where I kept talking about general sessions judges, because I think that that's where you would go. If you had a question, I think you would go to the judge.
I don't think you do.
You know?
Well,
Because what they write is gonna go in front of that general session judge.
Yeah.
and I understand that, but, I mean, like, I'm looking at, okay, so here's, Attorney General Opinion 00126, talks about authority of judge over judicial commissioners.
Which county? So we talked about that. There's
That's a
several
larger
different-
county.
Oh, I understand, well, I don't think it is, actually, let's see here. Hold on, I'm looking to see what county this is about.
I
You
tell you
wanna
what,
see-
before,
here's the
before we
opinion.
do
Yeah, before
something
we
like
jump into
this, why
that,
don't we, I
I'll-
think we're overreacting right now. I think we're trying to do something. where
There's a
we don't-
motion on the table, I'm just.
I know
I
that,
don't
and
know
I'm
if
not
we
saying
are,
we.
actually. I've got some further questions, but I don't think that we are overacting from getting rid of this policy manual
Well, I don't
and
think so
going
either.
directly into this and only this, and then making sure that, she, you know, she has an administrative role. But that's it. And at that point, the other question that I have is if it's just administrative, do we need an assistant director? Or do you have just one person who's over administration?
Well, if somebody goes on leave or vacation, you need somebody.
Get sick.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
That would be a good question for HR though.
yeah. It's, I mean, because if you're just doing
We don't answer that.
scheduling. Yeah,
We don't have anything to do day to day.
okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So are we saying if we need a director, if someone needs to be hired as the director, that we would no longer do that? HR would hire the director.
I think the net effect of what y'all are about to vote on, if it passes, is that policy and procedures manual of the county commissioner, excuse me, judicial commissioner,
This one.
would be no more. You
So
still have
this
a director and deputy director,
Exactly.
but their duties are greatly reduced. And hopefully, we're restoring the independence of that office.
Yes.
But when you say they're reduced to following the HR manual for the county. Correct.
Mm-hmm. Just like any other director for any other department, whether,
Any other employee.
yeah,
And the director and assistant director and the commissioners would follow the TCA plus that manual in order to operate in that office.
right.
Okay?
Who would recommend
Who would
for
recommend,
renewal?
and who would interview with the director
That would be a
also?
question for HR.
Well, because
It's
well,
not
that falls
yet,
under
we haven't
TCA.
voted on it yet, so we may not
So-
want to have that yet.
Yeah, but that
I'm
falls
just
under
saying, is that a
TCA.
question
And
that
I-
we come in, who's going to interview the people that possibly become judicial commissioners? Someone,
Can I make a statement?
No, actually, because we're not taking public
Okay.
comment.
but anyhow, someone would have to interview for those positions. And do you want a non-judicial commissioner to interview someone for that job that doesn't know about the job, doesn't know about the duties?
So I think,
The committee did
for-
that, John.
We used to interview everyone. That's what we used to do. We
okay,
interviewed every single judicial
And some people
commissioner.
had no clue about it.
so this is
I
where I
know,
wish
I
Keanu
know.
was here, but
Yeah, but what we did in the committee, we used to interview every single person that was trying to get a job in that office, everyone. And we
So-
did that also, well, we did it for the probation too.
So if somebody applied for a judicial commissioner's job,
They would come in,
who would let us, I guess HR would say, hey, you got an applicant. And then we would call. them
HR
up
would
and say,
come
"Can you
in
come
with
do it?"
questions, suggested questions.
I think HR can set up that hierarchy. how they choose to do it and hand that off.
So I think the way it's done now for every other department is you as the director of that department say, I have an opening. So you go to HR and HR then advertises that job and then they bring in the applicants and then between HR and that director, they interview the applicants. And then at that point, then they turn around and,
That's the way they do it now. That's the way they do it now.
Well,
Is it different?
you're talking, you
I would like
can't,
to-
he's an elected official. And
Right.
that's something different. His office,
right,
you're under
Yeah.
an elected official.
So the way we do
Same
it
as
now,
living
the way
laws,
we do
same
it
as-
now, Laura.
right.
So
I
they're elected.
understand. Well, I'm not talking about that. So, okay, so for example, I know finance recently had a position available. Okay? So, in finance, Aaron Maynard, the director of finance, is a county employee, so this is a county department. So that's how that works. So Aaron worked with Kiana. They actually advertised the position, and then they did interviews with Aaron as the director of the department, along with Kiana with HR, and then determined who they wanted to hire, and then that person was, issued an offer, and then, then away you go, and HR has the process to onboard people and so on. So I would think that we would want to mirror something like that.
Well,
Now,
we could
we
do
would-
it, excuse me a second, we
Okay.
could do it that way, but that person has to go to the county commission
Right.
for appointment.
No, I agree. And that's,
And
Has
that's,
to come through this committee first.
that's what I'm saying. It comes to this
To be
committee.
recommended to the
Right.
county commission.
Exactly, we
Yes.
recommend to the county
And
commission.
that's the only role that we have in that.
Yeah,
I
so,
agree.
So
So-
HR would come to us and say, we recommend this person for hire.
actually, the
reasons.
director
I think it would be the
and
director
HR
and
together.
Yeah.
And HR.
Well,
Yeah. The director probably would come and say, we have this person.
yes.
HR and I, we interviewed the person, we find him to be or her to be qualified to do the job. And normally, what we've been doing is hiring part-time for the year, or less than a year, until they're trained, and if they acclimate and they're doing a good job, they're gonna be at least 1 year if they want part-time. And somewhere in that first year or after the first year, they will either be appointed, reappointed for 1 to 4 years, or not reappointed based on the activity they've done. Now, somebody's gotta recommend them for reappointment. Do you do
We
a
have a
vote?
human resources division.
Do you have a vote
Keep up with
in the
that.
county commission office to do that? I don't think, so. Or the judicial commission. Somebody's gotta recommend that. And I think that's one of the administrative roles of the director or the deputy director. It's gotta be in that office, because the HR doesn't have knowledge of the job.
Okay.
So I think what we need to do.
I think for now, it'll-
I think what we need to do is not get away with the book, do away with the book right away, although we have it on the board to do. I think we need to pare down the book to put in exactly what it is we want to do. And because the book is really voluminous as far as, it covers the little nitnoy stuff in the office and stuff, and how this happens, that happens, where we've gone overboard on that book. And we need to make a smaller version of it and have HR maybe handle it, but that's how we need to do it somehow.
I think there just needs to be a new HR policy about this. And
That
that's it.
HR develops.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm ready to vote.
maybe.
Okay, so I'll tell you, before
Can I
we
ask you a
vote,
question?
why don't we have a time frame that this will be deleted so we can give HR time to develop that? Is that doable? I mean, she's not gonna do it overnight.
There's
Okay.
motion, second on the floor, so we gotta deal with that.
No,
So-
we can
Okay.
modify the motion.
So we're asking HR, I'm gonna write this down because I just wanna make sure that I've got it right. So we're asking, yeah, so we're asking HR to
To develop.
develop,
Here's what it said. Motion to dissolve, do away with the policies and procedures handbook in its entirety and allow HR to take over that process and operate under the county handbook. And
right,
that's your motion?
That is my motion.
Okay, do we need to clarify anything about, the judicial commissioner, job description or the hiring process as we've outlined?
That's an HR duty, it sounds like.
First of
Well,
all,
that's-
this has to go to the full commission before it ever comes to take.
Yeah, exactly.
No, this
No,
doesn't.
it
This
No,
is
it
what-
doesn't.
You can do away with your policy book, that's where, the policy book that came up here never went to the full commission.
Right.
I don't think.
It
No, it
did
never
not.
went,
No.
Okay.
no, it never went to full commission,
I'm
which was a
gonna
problem
shut
too.
down, 'cause I
No, it
remember
didn't.
correctly. Okay.
Yeah.
But, and also, what's gonna have to happen is we're gonna have to change the rule book to reflect this.
Why?
Because the rules that are in there now for the judicial committee,
Not under that rule.
Can you read the rule again, Mike?
I can, it's very simple. To recommend and inform the commission on any matters concerning the judicial commissioners, the general sessions judges, the circuit court clerk, and the clerk and master.
That's it.
It's very broad.
I thought it was changed.
It's
That actually
broad.
makes sense because.
That's the one that was, it was
I mean,
changed
we'll
to
still be
that.
doing the same, we'll be doing exactly the same thing, we're just not involved in day-to-day operations, just like
Agreed.
every other committee in this county is not involved in day-to-day operations.
Agreed.
Okay. Now, does this mean it's gotta go to the commission first?
No, not to do away.
No, not to with the book, but to change
Give
jobs
them
it
time
does.
to do.
But to change, so we're not doing away with the chair or the director or the deputy director. We're not doing away by doing this.
Right.
Okay. Okay, any
Yeah.
other discussion?
Do we wanna add a time frame for HR to get?
I think you wanna make a motion to modify the motion.
What's your opinion on
What
that?
do they,
I don't know, I mean, that's her job.
I mean, what do they need?
I get it.
I'd say,
Yeah, what do they
I'd
need to
say
do?
not later than,
That would be
I mean,
fine.
especially when you sit here and you actually look at
Everybody in the
this
office.
book.
you can make a motion to modify the motion to make it whatever time frame you want it to, please.
I call the question.
Well, do we have,
Yeah.
I don't have an
okay. Call for the question.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
amendment.
Opposed? Okay, we did away with that book. Now, can we make a motion to have HR do this?
That was part of the,
I think that was
Original
part of
motion.
the
That's
original
part of the
motion.
motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So at that point, so HR
But-
now
but
has
see,
the power
that part
to
of
do
the
things,
motion-
like the hiring, like we talked about, we don't need to outline that
The
anymore.
recommendation. The
Right,
hiring is done by the county commission.
right. What I'm saying is, I mean,
The
it's,
interviewing and-
the interviewing and that whole process, we don't need to outline that, because I'm
Follows.
pretty sure it's in
Okay.
here. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question, Mike. When we said have HR do this, does that have to go to the commission for that vote?
Yeah.
Because we're.
they're already under the,
Yeah, we already
Already have it
did
down in
this.
handbook.
That's right. All
Yeah.
y'all did was say you're gonna put the
Yeah.
judicial commissioner.
Yeah.
on there.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
and
just
you
wanna
know,
make sure.
In
you
my
know, the commission
opinion, you
passed
don't.
this, right? This all came through
Oh,
the
it came
commission.
through the commission. That
Oh,
Oh,
passed
yeah,
the commission.
yes, it did.
You did, you did.
So, I mean, this has already been through the commission,
Okay,
so.
okay. Any other discussion?
I don't think so. Are there any other open questions about anything that we had on the agenda, or?
I don't have any.
I've got another matter I need to discuss with y'all before we go.
Okay.
Totally unrelated, but the Marsh lawsuit.
Yeah,
Roger Marsh has now, the lawsuit has run past what his term would have been. And I have been asked by the insurance carrier if we would be interested in trying to compromise that lawsuit and make it go away. I don't have any specifics. What she was asking me was whether we'd be interested in discussing it. If we're not, then it needs to go to trial. If we are, then we'll
So
open
to
some
settle.
discussions and bring it back to you for.
okay. To settle out of court.
Yes. Because he's already, he didn't get reelected, so
Right,
his damages are gonna be finite, you know, so you can,
right.
so. If
I'd
you settle it.
say, I'll make a motion that we, you discuss it and bring it back to us for a discussion.
It's administrative only for that. She's gonna have to know
do we have to make a motion for that? You can
Well,
discuss it anyway.
I- Well, no, not with that. The lady called me and I said, I really don't have any authority to settle this. So, yeah, I think I'd like that covered, if y'all. Now, I won't settle it, whatever we can agree on, if anything.
So
I'll
we
bring it
still
back
have
to
the
y'all.
option to send it to trial if we don't like what we come up with?
You what?
Like, would we still have the option to send it to trial if we don't like what? is-
Yes.
Yeah, you go to
We
trial.
can
Second,
refuse
Mr.
it.
John.
Because there's still also a pending pro quo warranto lawsuit
That's,
that the district attorney's office has filed,
yeah,
and that's still active.
yeah, I think he'll be happy to see me or whatever.
Okay, any discussion on that? It's pretty simple, we're just getting you bring it to us.
I
If
seconded the
we- If we
motion.
don't like it, we'll just tell them.
Yeah, I won't agree to, I can't agree to anything, but all I do is
Right,
talk.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, anything else? Anyone? Get one more motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
All right.